Hey everybody, this is JJ Johnson, and you're watching Reality Survival. So today, I wanted to talk about the fundamentals of prepping, and this, and specifically, why we do what we do, and then what we do. So this video is not really directed for people who are experienced preppers and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be pretty basic. It's going to be kind of an explanation of why we talk about the things we talk about, why we do the things we do, and all that kind of stuff. Hey, what's up, Richard? I am a little sick right now, so if I keep sniffing and stuff, sorry about that. It's just the way it is. All right, so prepping. I guess the first thing that we need to talk about is just define prepping. What is it? And it's short for disaster preparedness. And so, hey, what's up, Kelly and Liberty? And so the idea behind disaster preparedness is that we recognize that disasters happen. Things happen all around us all the time. And we want to try to be as self-reliant as we can. And we want to do that so that we can help to rebuild the community and get things back to normal as quickly as possible. Because we don't, like a lot of doomsday prepper shows and stuff, they kind of make people look a little bit crazy, and they kind of almost try to put a twist to it that, makes things, makes people think that we are looking forward to some kind of a disaster. And that's absolutely, nothing could be further from the truth. Hey, what's up, Bizza Rizza Jizza? Mary, Clint, Richard, everybody. Hey. And so, that's the basic thing there is we're trying to be prepared, to be self-reliant so that we can assist in rebuilding the community and getting things back to normal as soon as possible. Generally speaking, I think preppers really kind of believe that there are three kinds of people in the world. There are the sheep, which are the unprepared masses, or zombies, is it's kind of a metaphor for zombies. Then there are the wolves, who are the takers or the predators, and then there are the sheepdogs, who are the protectors, and the people who are going to try to keep order and that kind of thing. Hey, what's up, Yankee, Virginia? So that's kind of the way, the prism at which we see the world through is, those three kinds of people out there. And prepping is primarily centered around three co-equal tenets. And that is knowledge, book smarts, equipment and gear, that kind of thing. And then experience and training. All right. So you really need to have all three of those things to be solidly grounded in prepping and to be a person who will be, able to assist the community when something happens. All right. Because just having book smarts is not enough. Just having the gear is not enough. You got to know how to use that stuff and the experience in real world, seeing how it works and what its capabilities are and all those kinds of things. All right. So that's kind of the three main tenets of prepping, in my opinion, anyway. And if you guys want to add stuff to this, feel free to add it into the comments, and try to put it, if you want me to see it, try to put it in all caps. That way I can pick it out, because the chat just kind of flows through as I'm going here, and I can't keep up with all of it. But if you put it in caps, I can usually pick it out okay. Let's see here. So the idea is that we're striving for as a sustainable and self-reliant kind of lifestyle. That's what we're looking for. We don't want upon our neighbors or our community or the government or anything along those lines. And it's quite the reverse. In fact, we want to be the people who can provide things to our neighbors, provide things, to assist our community in getting the rebuilding effort, going and all that kind of stuff. And I've got about 40 bullet points to cover, and I'm on about number 5. So this is going to be a long one. If you guys, and I'm probably talking a little bit slow today. If you guys want to, you can, click the little star button if you're watching it after the fact and put it on ×2 so that it'll go, the little wheel, so that it'll go a little faster for you and won't take up so much of your time. Okay, so number 5 here is when you begin prepping, if you decide that you want to become a prepper, and it's not definitely for everybody, but if you're not a sheep and you're not a wolf, well, then you're probably a prepper, a sheepdog. And so if you're going to start addressing, you want to start looking at local issues that can affect you and disrupt the basic services in your area, in your town, things that can affect the power grid, electricity, water and sanitation, sewers and different things along those lines. And, so for example, and these are the high probability and low impact items. All right. And, so for example, it's hurricanes is one of those kind of things. Snowstorms or ice storms is another kind of thing like that, if you know that they regularly happen. And let's see here, what are some of the other forest fires, earthquakes, those kinds of things. Regional disasters that do happen on a regular basis, because those are more likely to happen. Even though the impact isn't as great and as big as some of the other stuff that we'll talk about, those are the ones that actually do happen. And you could even look at it as far as, job loss on a personal individual level, or a factory closing down in your town or something along those lines. Those can have big effects on, on people and in their lives. So as you cover all of the high probability and low impact kind of disasters, and you get prepared for those, and you feel like you're covered, then you can start moving towards the low probability, high impact disasters. And those are things like, nationwide grid down kind of situation where there's no electricity anywhere, or the Yellowstone volcano erupting, or nuclear war, civil war, those kind of big things that aren't quite as likely, but if they did happen, they would have a big impact. And it's kind of funny because in the prepper community, I try to do the best that I can to talk about the regional stuff as much as possible. Unfortunately, what happens is nobody likes to watch those videos. Everybody likes to watch the videos that talk about the high probability, the low probability, high impact stuff. That's just what the community, and the reason I think that they like to talk about that is because it's a thought exercise, and it tries to get them putting their mind into a situation where, it's kind of like, man, what would I do? How would I react? All those kinds of things. Now, in the prepping world, some Paul Frank said government shutdown. Yeah, I mean, that could affect you. I'm lucky, and I work for the DoD, and I'm lucky right now that they didn't shut the DoD down this time. But in the past, when they have shut it down, then it was a concern for me. So absolutely, government shutdown could be something that is a deal. So let me hit a couple points here, Rebecca, and I'll answer your thing. So the next thing is that, in prepping, we try to utilize the concepts of redundancy and multiplicity of use. Okay. And basically, hey, Xander, what's going on?
Just kidding.
Okay. Basically, you're going to try to use the concepts of redundancy and multiplicity of use. You want to be able to maximize the number of items that you have that are useful to you, even when there is no disaster. And Hibernian Sun had a video that talked about this concept recently. You guys should go check out his channel if you're not already subscribed to it. So multiplicity of use and redundancy is a key thing, because the bottom line is that nobody knows if there's going to be, some kind of bad situation or not, especially a nationwide one. Nobody really knows. And so you don't want to spend a bunch of money and a bunch of time and effort and stuff that is never going to be of any use to you. So you try to frame these things in a way and use them in a way that it's good for your life. And Jase Medical also has another really good podcast and YouTube channel and stuff, so you should check that one out as well too. That it works if in the bad times, and then even if there is no bad times, you can still use it for stuff, around your house and all that kind of thing. Okay, so I think that's the main points of kind of why we do it and the general philosophy on how we think and all that. Rebecca, you had a question here. Let me see if I can find it. She says, Rebecca Martinez says, I live in Nebraska. Do you think Yellowstone going would affect me? Yeah, if some of the quote unquote experts are correct, I've seen anything from basic extinction of the human species on the planet to at least the vast majority of people in the United States being killed. And the reason is that it's a very large caldera, and if it was to go kinetic, then it would eject so much strata and stuff up into the atmosphere that most of the entire world would experience a nuclear winter that would kill off and shorten the growing seasons for most people. Maybe some people in the southern hemisphere might not have some effects, but it would be a really, really bad situation. But there's no reason to really focus on that kind of stuff right now. I mean, for me, I'm a Christian, and I kind of look at that as that's in God's hands. I mean, those are extinction level events in my opinion. And you can do what you can for those, but you really should focus on what you can control and the things that are more likely. Okay, so all right. So as far as that's kind of why we do what we do. The rest of these points are primarily going to be focused upon what we do as preppers and things that we think about, things we try to prepare for, gear we need to buy or that we think we need to buy, and those different kinds of things. Water storage is high on that list of anybody's list. I just went out today and purchased another, I guess it was around 70 gallons or so, to give us an additional, it's about a week for 4 of us, maybe a little bit more, but or a month for one person, kind of depending on how you broke it down. And that cost me about $60, but it's hard to find places to store that stuff around the house, so water is a hard one. But it's one of the most important ones, because we can become dehydrated in a very short amount of time, anywhere from, a day to 3 days. And depending on the circumstances and the situation, you can become very dehydrated to the point of unconsciousness and death. And I recently did a full video on dehydration. If you guys want to watch it, I will try to link to it below. So with water, you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up in a way that where you have some water on hand. Okay. And, start with a month, a month's worth of water, maybe, whatever. I mean, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how much space you have in your house, and then maybe shoot for like 3 months or something if you can. But if you don't have that kind of storage capacity, then what you need to do is you need to think about knowing where the groundwater sources are around you. You can use Google Earth or whatever, or you can just get out and go walk around and look for it. And then you need to think about, okay, if I had to pull water out of here every day, how would I do it? Would I just use buckets or whatever the case may be? And I talked about this a little bit in that dehydration video. But then you need to set yourself up so that you can transport that water back to your house. Okay, and then once you get it there, how to be able to purify it, to filter it, to do whatever you're going to do with it to make it safe to drink. Okay, and so a part of that, and a part of each one of these, like I said, we've got the knowledge, experience, and the gear. So it's not just enough to know that you need the water and to put a little bit back. You also need to know how to filter it. You also need to do some dry runs on figuring out how you're going to get the water to and from. You got to have that experience there, and need to know multiple ways to purify water. Because boiling is great, but boiling uses up a lot of resources, so there's other methods that are out there that you can use. And I've done several different videos on that, on like solar disinfection and different kinds of filters and pasteurizing. And, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about that. So look into that and learn about it. So the next thing on the list is food storage and having additional food on hand so that you don't have to rush to the store is kind of a main, thing with preppers. And with that, you really, I think that it is important. So DB Cooper says, have a filter like the Berkey. Yeah, the Imperial Berkey is a good one. The Alexa Pure is a good one. I tend to like the Alexa Pure a little better, but a lot of people like the Berkeys, and I think they're both really good items, right? The Berkey is just like twice as expensive, and I don't know that it does that much better for justifying the cost. But anyway, they're both really good. Hey, what's up, Tom? So Renee says, hey, JJ, I'm getting started late. Any suggestions for a 60-year-old retired RN? Yeah, man. So just real quick, this is getting off my thing here, but as an RN, you're a hugely valuable resource. I would spend some time and effort in trying to get hooked up in a prepper group, and we'll talk about that later on this list, because of all of the groups out there, I'm sure any one of them would be happy to have you. The knowledge and experience that you have in your head and the hands-on experience, of how to deal with medical situations is invaluable to preppers and to anybody really. But so I would try to get hooked in with the group, and then I've got a whole playlist that's for new preppers specifically, and this video will be going into that playlist. But and it basically kind of takes you through, what are the first things you should do, what's the research you should do, how do you get started, and then what are some of the things you should buy. And it kind of tries to help shape a little bit of a mindset on where to go and stuff. So you can check out that playlist. And I think that will help out. Christy says, out of all my preps, JJ, water's been the most challenging to store due to the weight. However, I managed to store up a year's worth of supply. Christy, that's awesome. That's really, really good. If you can do a year's worth, you're kicking butt. I mean, that's really good. But that is the problem that most people have with water, and that's why it takes some additional thought in figuring out what you're going to do. Okay, so back to food storage. As a general rule, I think I generally try to have at least a month's worth of food as just starting out as a basic level of additional food. And you can do that pretty easily by just filling your pantry, keeping it full. And I mean keeping it full. And then you rotate through that food, and you rotate it so that you eat it as it comes in, and you get low, you get some more, and all that kind of stuff. And this works really great. Like my daughter is in college, and she was just here last night, and I gave her 2 big boxes full of food that I was able to just pull out of the pantry. And it didn't even really make that big of a dent in the pantry, but she'll probably be able to eat off of that for a month and a half or something like that. So having a good deep larder, as they say, is important. I also think that it's important to have multiple layers to your food storage as well. Having MREs on hand is great because in a situation where you have to leave or go hunting or do something where you're out and about, whatever, and you kind of on the move, MREs are great to have. So I think they're good to store, and they'll last about 10 to 15 years. They say only 5, but I've eaten them at 10 and they were fine, and they'll go even longer. let me stop here. Somebody's got a question. Creative Redundancy says, any good ways to store water during the winter? No heat like up here in Canada. Yeah. So that's a tough situation, man. I mean, you got to allow for expansion. You got to have a container that is going to be that's going to be strong enough to withstand the expansion pressures, because water expands as it freezes. The other thing that you could do is you could also look at rigging up or setting up some kind of a thermal greenhouse, which is basically a greenhouse that's in the ground and it goes down, you know, at least 6 to 8 feet, depending on where your latitude is. And then you have, you know, clear Lexan panels over the top of it. And that keeps the greenhouse a constant like 54 degrees or so year round, even in cold latitudes. So I know they've got some of those up here in Nebraska, in Alliance, Nebraska, not far from me. They're really cool. Man, you can check out videos on those. That will help you out a little bit. Okay. Oh, that's pretty cool. So Ordnips, ORDNNPS says Mountain House sign up with email for up to 40% off. Then if you can get 40% off Mountain House, that's good, because then it'll make it about what other foods cost. Mountain House is expensive, but it's also probably the highest quality stuff. And I recently became an affiliate with Mountain House as well, and they have retroactively changed their storage dates to 30 years. So pretty awesome stuff, and it does taste good as well. Okay. Excuse me. So the other thing is along with your MREs, you also want to have stocked some additional non-perishable stuff, you know, stuff that doesn't go bad as quick, that you can store in like freeze-dried, not freeze-dried, excuse me, but you know, in like vacuum seal bags and stuff like that. Like I've got some rice. I mean, vacuum sealed rice plain rice will last probably 30 years. You know, you can do that with oatmeal. You can do it with a variety of different things, beans. You know, there's lots of videos out there that talk about foods that don't go bad. And so check out some of those things that you can buy now right off the shelf and put it into your stores that don't go bad, or for a real long time anyway. Then on top of that, the next layer that I like to recommend for folks is having freeze-dried stuff. You know, buying the buckets and boxes and different things of freeze-dried food. It's a little bit more lightweight and stuff like that, and it lasts for 25 to 30 years. You don't have to worry about rotating those things because they last so long. So if a disaster doesn't happen for 10, 15 years, it's no big deal to you. You still got that stuff up there. So that's kind of the multi-tiered system that I recommend with food storage. And I think that's probably pretty typical for what a lot of people do. But that's just one aspect, again, you know, of the stuff that you can stock. And the reason that you want to have stuff that you can stock is for a couple of reasons. Okay. So one, it's so that you can take care of yourself for a long period of time. It's also too, so that you can help your neighbors and the people around you. Okay. And you can use it however you want to use it. But to me, you know, it's kind of like a form of payment to get their cooperation if need be, even, you know, but it's also just for humanitarian efforts and stuff like that too. So, because you will have to work with your neighbors. There's no question about that. And so those are kind of the big things on that. The other part of food storage, food procurement, is hunting, fishing, traps, maybe trading for food, foraging for wild edibles, you know, those kinds of things. And those are all things that preppers try to, if they can, if they have the time to, if they're in the right location, all that kind of stuff, learn a little bit about, you know, so that they're not just deciding, oh, the crap hit the fan, I'm going to go out and go deer hunting. Well, if you've never been deer hunting before and you don't have the right equipment, you don't have the know-how and experience with it, you're just going to scare away a lot of deer and you're not going to be getting anything. So, you know, that there's that knowledge and that experience piece that we try to work towards. The next part of this, and all three of these things storing stuff up and procuring food in the wild and animal husbandry are kind of the three main legs of food, as a whole for preppers. Animal husbandry is extremely important, and it's really probably the most important long-term viable solution. Okay. You will definitely be able to periodically supplement with hunting and fishing and those kinds of things, and wild edibles and different stuff. But the regular supply of calories is going to come from those people who are involved in animal husbandry. And chickens are great animals to get involved with. We've got some chickens out here. We've got, or we don't have, but we're going to try to get ready to also set ourselves up for rabbits, because rabbits actually can produce the most meat on the most regular basis of any other animal. Pound for pound, for what you feed them, the amount of meat they give you is the best, supposedly. I think pigs are a close second. But anyhow, there's a reason they say, they screw like rabbits, because the rabbits multiply and reproduce on about a 21 or 28 day cycle, something along those lines. And so, every basically, what is it, 3-4 weeks or something like that, you're able to cull off and reprocess, get new meat. So rabbits are cool. Goats are also cool because they can give you meat. They can also give you milk. And between those three, you could really be pretty sustainable on a fairly small piece of property anyway. But you've also got cattle and sheep and all the other kind of stuff that you can get into as well. The next thing is gardening. Gardening is another thing that is. Sorry, I just saw a question that got me off track. Creative Redundancy said, what would be a good source for fat to grow or raise? So probably for fat, you're probably going to be looking at pigs. It's probably going to be the most cost-effective to get fat to render for lard and soap and different things along those lines. But you could also do beef as well. I don't think you're going to get a ton of fat off of rabbits per se, on the level of, because once you start to render fat down, it really, you need a lot of it to render stuff down into useful amounts. So I would probably imagine pigs would be the best for fat. But anyway, back to this. So the next point on the list here is gardening. And again, this is a huge part of being self-sufficient. And with gardening, we're kind of looking at, we want to try to use non-hybrid, non-GMO heirloom seeds and have some of those seeds stored away and packed away, for emergencies, because, if you can provide your neighbor who is a prolific gardener, but maybe they use, hybrid seeds where they don't, reproduce every year. If you can give them a packet full of seeds and say, hey, I'm going to give you these seeds, you plant them, we'll split the harvest, then that's going to help you out even more. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so seeds could be a hugely valuable thing to have in a, in any kind of a really bad situation where it's going to be a long-term deal. And then also on to that with gardening, and let me just back up a minute and say that you need to practice gardening. You need to practice, and you can practice anywhere, man. I mean, it doesn't matter. Just grow something, because thinking that you're going to just throw your first garden out there and then it's all going to come out okay is not a real thing. Okay, you're going to have failures, and so you need to work through those failures before a situation ever comes up. But also, back to the last point on gardening is canning. Having the ability to can and to put up, put up food, and so that you can eat that food through the winter, and then reuse, those jars and the canning lids and whatever the case may be, you know, for the next season is something that you would do on kind of a rotating and regular basis. And having, you know, those things ahead of time, some canning supplies, some, you know, mason jars and the lids and, you know, all that jazz. You can buy that stuff relatively cheap right now. And in fact, one of the things that I do is I store dry goods in my mason jars now, so that, you know, I'll have some of those, and then I've got extra lids and different things like that as well. So a lot of different stuff you can do. Like I said, that kind of that multiplicity of use. Next point here is communications, and these are all not really in any particular order, because any one of them could be really, really important in your situation, you know. So there's really not a number 1, 2, and 3. Any of these could be important, but with communications, having the resources to be able to gather intelligence and know what's going on around you and what's going on in the world is hugely important. Psychologically, it means so much to be able to have an idea of knowing what's going on around you. So, you know, ham radios, you know, and those radios are usually in the, you know, like the HF or UHF, VHF kind of range. Even satellite, some hams are able to even, you know, get satellite communications and stuff. Personally, what I use is the GMRS radios, but there's other frequencies that are MERS, the FRS, CB band, shortwave band, and shortwave is really cool. Everybody should have a shortwave radio, I think, because that, especially if you get an antenna extender, where you can, like a long wire to go with it, you can pick up radio stations from other countries, from, you know, South America and Europe and, you know, all that kind of stuff in differing environmental conditions, and it allows you to hear what is being reported elsewhere. So let's say if it was an EMP that happened in the United States, if you had a functional shortwave radio, and you put in a Faraday cage or something like that, then you could listen to what's being reported about what's happening in the geopolitics, you know, elsewhere. And that is really helps to inform you on how you're going to deal with things and all that kind of stuff. So communication is important, but you also want to be able to communicate on a tactical level, you know, with your team, with your family, with your people who are doing patrols in your neighborhood. You want to, you know, also have the citywide, you know, communication with maybe, who knows, the mayor or the sheriff or whatever the case may be, or other prepping groups in the area, you know. And then you also want to be able to look at doing statewide and nationwide communication. That's where kind of the ham radio subset comes in. So being able to gather intelligence through the use of radios is a big part of prepping. It's important. Okay, the next one is D9 says, have you shown a Faraday cage, JJ? Yes, yeah, I have. I showed you an easy way to build a nested Faraday cage. Just let me throw that out there. A lot of people talk about microwaves, old microwaves being good Faraday cages, and yes and no. That they might be and they might not be. It depends, because it's a narrow frequency band that those things are shielded for, and we don't necessarily know that that's going to be the same frequency band that is going to happen with an EMP. So microwaves are kind of iffy, if you ask me. But a nested Faraday cage is a very simple thing to do. I did a whole video on it, and what you want to do is you want to alternate differing layers of differing materials to offer the most protection. So check out that video if you want. It's pretty easy to do, and it doesn't cost a lot, so it's pretty cool. Okay, the next one on this list is home security alarms, and or just home security in general. Home security. And that could be alarms, that could be lights, you know, motion detection lights, stuff, cameras, door armor. And when I say that, Armor Concepts is a company that I recently signed up with that has, and I'm gonna have a video on it pretty soon, that has, you know, basically steel plates and stuff that you can put alongside the doors and in the door jambs and different things, so that it will make your doors a lot more impenetrable, a lot harder to get through. even with a RAM, it makes it a lot more difficult. But we also, look at having like hurricane or ballistic film over the windows. I mean, just basic things that can make our house a lot more impenetrable and kind of a hard target, if you will. Watchdogs is another good one. Joe threw that out there. Absolutely. So that is, that's kind of home security. That's something that we focus on a little bit and try to beef up. The next one is EDC gear, and EDC stands for everyday carry. And with everyday carry gear, like I said, we kind of view ourselves as the protectors, as the sheepdog. And so we try to carry equipment with us that will allow us to be able to help protect the sheep, help protect other people, help protect ourselves and our family, stop the bad guys or the wolves from doing bad things. And, that usually includes, and I'll do a video. I've updated a few of the things that I carry in my EDC gear, so I'll probably do a video on that here pretty quick. But, it includes a concealed carry firearm, maybe extra magazines, a tourniquet. That's one of the things I recently added to mine. If you're carrying a gun, you should be carrying a tourniquet too. A knife, I don't know, multi-tool, pen, small first aid kit, those kinds of things, basically just allows you to, deal with people in a forceful and potentially lethal way if it absolutely came down to it and you had to do that. And then some people also carry like an everyday carry backpack, that has even more stuff in it, maybe a trauma kit in there, maybe some additional food and water, snacks, little things like that. Additional ammo, whatever the case may be. So you can go really far down into that rabbit trail if you want to. Another thing that we kind of focus on and we try to teach and try to get other people to be more aware of is situational awareness. And I just did the last video I did, I think was talking about situational awareness. It was like an hour and 20 minutes long. This one's probably going to be as long or longer. Sorry about that. But I wanted this to be a kind of cover all of it, all the stuff. And it was everything I could think of. If I'm missing something, feel free to throw it in the comments. So situational awareness is important because situational awareness will allow us to either detect something that's bad is going to happen before it happens, or it'll allow us to be ready, right when something happens so that we can put a stop to it immediately. And it keeps us from being victims as well. So if you're not really familiar with situational awareness concepts, then I would recommend that you watch that video. It'll probably be linked at the end of this one. The next thing on the list here is self-defense and martial arts. It's important to live, in the way of the gun, know how to use firearms and all that kind of stuff. But not everybody can do that because of some of the socialist places around the world and stuff. They don't let people have guns or whatever. And sometimes maybe you just don't have it, or your gun, whatever, got, taken, or who knows what, and you have to go on with hands-on. And so we like to study martial arts. And for me, what I recommend to folks is whatever martial art it is that you decide to choose, just make sure that it's one that you actually spar with people, at close to real speeds. Okay. Personally, I think that Muay Thai, kickboxing, and BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are really great combinations of the two, because you get a lot on your standing game and then you get a lot on the ground game as well. But there's a lot of other ones out there that are good. It's just the requirement for me is that it can't just be learning katas and different things like that. You have to actually practice it against someone and see what that looks like, what that feels like, how that works, so Justice Blue says quick clot for EDC. Yeah, having a quick clot bandage that you carry is a great thing as well. Krav Maga is another one that's okay. the sparring level, I don't know how deep they get on the sparring level with Krav Maga. I've probably taken 4 or 5 classes with those. And I think the Krav Maga stuff is really good for gun takeaways and, knife takeaways and stuff like that. That's where I think Krav really shines. In the striking and ground fighting, I don't think it's quite as good, but that's just my opinion. Not like, dissing it or whatever, but okay. So the next aspect to this is first aid, and with first aid, we're talking about, knowledge, knowing how to suture, knowing how to, stop bleeding, with direct pressure and elevation, having trauma kits, having references, and extensive first aid kits, and having references to be able to, read, because if the situation were bad enough, then you might have to just figure out how to treat something yourself, Uta Azima says judo. Yeah, judo is not too bad. There's a lot of judo mixed in with Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. And so I think that's not terrible either. So medical, and the thing with, I think one of the most overlooked things with regard to medical for most preppers is their bandage supply. If somebody gets shot or has a serious penetrating injury or, a major trauma, kind of major laceration and bleeding, I don't think a lot of people think about how much gauze it takes to treat a wound that might take 6 to 8 weeks to heal. It takes a lot. You really have to put up a lot of bandages and gauze rolls and 4x4s and all that kind of stuff to be able to successfully treat a bullet wound long term. So it's not just having a trauma kit, just a little blowout kit. You really got to have a lot more, and I mean boxes more, because if you're going to keep that person healthy, as a general rule, you need to change those dressings every day. So changing dressings every day for 6 to 8 weeks, that takes a lot. Joe says take a paramedic class. Absolutely. Paramedics, EMTs, like I was saying earlier, registered nurses and stuff like that. You guys are super valuable to the prepping community. You can also look at stocking up on antibiotics, fish antibiotics, essential oils. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can go into. Herbal medicines, having herbal medicine seeds to be able to plant, have a herb garden that has medicinal value to it and know how to use those. There's a lot you can get in there. I'm not quite sure, Mary. I'm sorry. I'm trying to read your question. Mary Waller says, what do you recommend for someone who has had a previously broken neck for self-defense? Well, I'd say a firearm. I mean, but depending on if you're able to do that or not. But if you work with a good gym, even with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you let people know about your injuries and different things like that and stuff, you can usually find people that will work with you and stuff. But you definitely got to be careful with that. And a lot of it what I would say is now, while the time is right and everything's good, get an evaluation from a doctor to see, is your neck fully healed? And if it's not fully healed, what do you need to do as far as physical therapy or whatever to get it to the point that it's up to par, basically. So that would be something to think about. Okay, the next one on here is one of the most exciting parts of prepping. I'm just teasing, it's really not, but is sanitation and hygiene or pandemic gear. Dawn, you asked, where do you get fish antibiotics? Fish and bird antibiotics, you can check, just Google, fish antibiotics or whatever, and it'll come up. There's not a lot of stores that carry them anymore. They've become a little bit harder to get. Amazon stopped selling them, I think, and stuff like that. So you'll just have to Google it and see. I can't remember the name. Oh, yeah, campingsurvival.com probably has them. Yeah, so there's a few places out there that have got them, but you just have to look for them, and they're a little bit expensive, but it's the same stuff. The fish antibiotics, and you can look and compare for yourselves. But I think Thomas Labs is the one that makes a lot of them. and they also make stuff for people, and it's in the same doses out of the same factory, so it's not bad. Okay, the next one, like I said, is sanitation, hygiene, and pandemic kind of stuff. Pandemics is one of those things that because we live in a society where we have running water pretty much everywhere, people can shower daily, and we also live in family units that are segregated, of usually like, 4 to 6 or less. We haven't had to deal with pandemics for a long time, and chances are we may not, because as long as everything is good and the sewer system is working, the water is flowing, and everything remains the way it is, then we probably will not have to deal with a pandemic situation, because our society is set up in a way that's quite resilient to it. It really is. And being able to shower all the time and stay clean is one aspect. The other aspect of it, like I said, is that our family units are segregated into smaller individual units. In other countries and in the past, when pandemics have been a bigger problem, sanitation was the number one reason that they were so much more lethal. And the other reason is because there were multiple families in one house. And so you had transference from other people, and it would affect more people that way. But anyway, it still is historically overdue. So pandemics are something that we think about. And, with that, there are a lot of supplies, and there's lots of good videos on YouTube. I think Full Spectrum Survival made a really good one. But there's a lot of different stuff you can have. But having like some N95 masks, that BioScarf that I recently reviewed, there was another set of masks. I can't remember the name right now off the top of my head now. I think the video is like called the most overlooked item in a urban survival kit or something like that. But anyway, having personal protective equipment to basically keep yourself from getting, sick and stuff like that is a good thing. Being able to set up a quarantine room in your home, or to seal off your home from the other homes around you if you wanted to keep from getting sick, as well as like, soap and maybe a portable shower and, those kinds of things to basically be able to continue and keep your sanitation up. Toilet paper, those kinds of things. So, all right. So Death Layer Magic, yeah, face masks do actually help you to keep from getting sick. If say, for example, with Ebola is transmitted by water droplets through the air. So if you're wearing a face mask and it keeps you from, inhaling their water droplets when they cough or whatever around you, then it's gonna keep you from getting contaminated. So they do actually help you a little bit, but it's not. It all really depends on how the disease is transferred and whether or not they're going to make a difference or not. But okay, so next thing is this one it's also one that I've done several videos on. Nobody ever watches them though because they're boring. Is fire suppression gear. Having the right number of fire extinguishers, having them laid out in a way that it makes it useful to you so that you can fight fires within your own home if you had to. Home fires are very, very common. And if the grid were to go down, they will be even more common because people will be trying to heat their home differently and stuff than they normally do. And there's going to be more accidents and, all that kind of stuff. And so, having the ability to fight fires within your own home is important. Also, look at fire blankets, emergency ladders to get out of the second story if you have a 2-story home, the escape hood masks that you can put on. I tested some of those, and they actually work really well. I was very, very surprised at how well that worked, that I could breathe cleanly when just wood smoke was just coming up right in my face, and I was able to continue to breathe. And when I took it off and tried to breathe, I was coughing and hacking and everything. So those emergency smoke masks do work quite well. Okay, the next thing is stored energy. And, this is especially important for people up in the northern tier, up in the colder area. But basically, you want to store up BTUs some way, and whether that's fuel as far as gas, diesel, propane, firewood, wood pellets, kerosene, white gas, whatever the case may be, whatever it is that you're going to use to heat your home, you want to store some BTUs up in case the power goes out. Then you could heat your home for a year or however long, So, having the ability to do that, to keep, fuel for your vehicle, fuel for a generator, whatever the case may be, for a pellet stove, wood stove, firewood, and it all is a regional kind of thing, like around here, wood pellets makes a whole lot more sense than firewood because there's just no damn trees anywhere. I mean, if you could buy a bunch ahead of time, that's fine. But you can store, it takes less square footage to store a whole lot more wood pellets than it does to store several cords of wood and that kind of thing. And all the wood that is around here is all pine, so it doesn't burn as much, doesn't have as many BTUs and everything like that. But it'll be situationally dependent for you. The key is think about figuring out what's going to work best for your situation, and how you would store up that fuel. Okay, so the next bullet point here is, and we're on number 21, so we're like halfway, guys. Sorry. Number 21 is regionally specific disaster gear. So like maybe if you live in a hurricane zone, you want to have hurricane shutters, or if you live in an earthquake zone, whatever stuff you would need for an earthquake or a drought or snowstorms or whatever the case may be. So, as you're examining what happens in your area on a regular and repeating basis, figure out if there's any specific gear that you need to address those things, and then make sure you get it. Okay. Next one is a get home bag. A get home bag is basically a bag where we're going to essentially put everything that we need. And I'm going to have a video on my most recent get home bag here in like a week. You want to have all the things that you need to have to get home. So let's say, for example, something happens and the roads close, or your car doesn't work anymore, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's an EMP, maybe it's cyber attack, maybe it's, I don't know, whatever. And you are, say, 120 miles away from your house. How are you going to get home? What are you going to do? Grab your get home bag and you hoof it. And everything in that bag is specifically, there for the purpose of getting you home. So that's for me, that's what it is. It's about 120 miles, 150 miles is about as far as I get away from my house when we go out on missions. And so I have to be able, I'm planning for, a few days of walking, and that's the stuff that I'm going to put in the bag there. But I think that every vehicle should have a get home bag in it, personally. I think that's kind of a main thing for preppers, is that you want to be able to, use the old leather personnel carriers if need be to get you home. All right. The next aspect to that is vehicle everyday carry gear. And with this, we're talking about like tow straps and, 12-volt jump starter, and maybe bolt cutters, or maybe, additional fix-a-flat, or something like tire slime and an air compressor, and just those kinds of things that you could potentially need with your vehicle and to have in your vehicle. You want to have those things. So it's just, it really kind of dependent on the vehicle size that you have and how much you can carry and all those kind of things. Road flares would be another one. The little safety triangles, that would be another one. A good, first aid kit is another thing to have in there. There's just a lot of stuff. I've done a video on that before. If you put in vehicle EDC gear, reality survival, it'll probably pop up. All right, the next three things are kind of all together, and I've talked about this in videos in the past. I'll try to make it quick here. Is your bug out gear, which is simple. When you hear people talk about bug out gear, you're just generally talking about camping gear. It's pretty much what it is. I think that you should start with your vehicle and taking as much stuff as you possibly can, maybe even a trailer, and take everything you had. And the idea with bugging in, bugging out, let me talk about that real quick too, is that, you know, the vast majority of people are probably going to bug in if something happens. They're going to stay home because it doesn't make a lot of sense to just go out and be a refugee, you know, walking around with a backpack or whatever, unless you have some place to go. And that some place that you needs to go needs to be, you know, it really should be something better than just going out into the woods. Okay. Because you're going to die. That's the step before dying, right? That's the step before death. Like you bug in as long as you can. If you have to bug out, you bug out and you take as much stuff as you can with you. And then if that fails, then you break that down into maybe an alternate vehicle, you know, like a four-wheeler or a UTV or a bicycle or whatever the case may be. And you take that and you try to get to a friend's house or, you know, another region that is stable and safe, or, you know, maybe a family member's house or something along those lines, somebody else in your group or whatever. But just grabbing your backpack and going on foot it's a fantasy. It really is a fantasy that a lot of people have, that they think that they're going to be able to just take their bug out bag and go live, you know, for indefinitely out in the woods. And that's just not the case. I was a SEER instructor, a survival expert in wilderness survival. And I'm telling you that I couldn't do it, and neither could other SEER guys. And at some point you're going to need medical care. You're going to need shelter. You're going to, you know, you're not going to be able to just be independent out in the woods, especially alone. It's not going to happen. So you want to think of bugging out as the last resort. Okay. It is the last resort. And when you go, you want to try to take your vehicle and as much stuff as you can. Go ahead and bring that alternate vehicle with you, maybe, like I said, an ATV, UTV, or whatever the case may be, and then all the way down to bicycles and backpacks and whatever, you know, even a game cart, you know, to help drag your stuff so you can bring more stuff with you, you know, that kind of thing. Think of it in layers, and think of it as a last resort. Now, the one caveat to that would be that if you are and if you are living in the city center, if you're living, you know, right in the heart of a big city, LA, New York, Chicago, something along those lines, you really should consider an alternative in some place that you can leave, so that right when something kicks off, you try to get out of there and get to your secondary location. And that's not the woods. That's a bug out location, a retreat, a place that is stocked, that offers all the things that you need: water, food, shelter, you know, security, all that kind of stuff. Because living in the heart of a big city when an event goes down is really just counting your days until you die. It's going to be bad in the cities. So I would just definitely try to stay away from that. Okay, let's see here. So that's enough on bug out stuff. All right, the next one, number 27 here on the list, is weapons. All right, firearms. You want to have defensive firearms, you know, like your everyday carry gun, your pistol. Personally, what I recommend for the first person, I did a whole video explaining this and why, but the first gun that a new prepper should buy is a high capacity 9mm, like a Glock 19 or a Smith & Wesson M&P 9 M2.0. I think both of those are excellent guns, but it's easily concealable. It's got a fairly high capacity. They've got fairly good distance. You can use that in a defensive capability in a lot of different areas, a lot of different ways. But you also want to look at long range. You also want to look at medium, close quarters kind of stuff. And then you also want to consider hunting as well. And I'll have a video here pretty soon on the 7 guns that I think every prepper should own. And so that'll hopefully give you a little bit of an idea. Ammo is the next one on the list, and having ammunition just makes sense. If you got a gun, you need to have ammo, and you need to have plenty of ammo. And I did a video on this talking about how much you should stockpile, so you can check that if you like. But, you know, needless to say, you want to have more. More is good. Okay, so next item on the list here, we're getting close to the bottom. We're at 29. Is tactical. Did I just go from 27 to 29? Oh, 28, 29. Okay. tactical combat gear. All right. And the reason that we say this is not that you're going to be like some kind of commando soldier or something like that. It's really just in the context of defending your neighborhood, you know, and maybe in some extraordinary circumstance, something beyond that. But generally speaking, it's going to be in being able to effectively defend your neighborhood. And with that, you want to have, armor, level 3 or level 4 plates, and soft armor, level 3A or level 2 soft armor. You want to have a plate carrier, maybe an LBV or a chest rig, something to carry ammo and a trauma kit and all that kind of stuff. I've done some videos on my setup in the past. You also want to have like a go bag. What I have is a big, it's a large bag that basically has everything in it, including, food, water procurement, shelter, clothing, and all the tactical stuff, so that I could grab the bag and go and be a useful member of a team who was going to do combat stuff if needed, in a short, with a short lead time, I could just grab the stuff and go. And that's, I think, a kind of a universal thing that a lot of preppers have. You might call it a go bag. You might call it Minuteman gear. You might call it, something along those lines. And I've been thinking about doing, showing the contents of that bag. If you guys want to see that, then let me know, and I'll show you what I keep in there. You also need to know about, just having that gear, again, is not the most important thing. I mean, it's important because you have to have it, or you should have it, but you also need to have tactical training. You need to know about patrolling. You need to know about ambushes and counter ambushes, those kinds of things, how to set up roadblocks, how to defeat roadblocks, all that kind of jazz, because it just kind of goes with it. So number 31 here is one that I wrote a blog post on like 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. And that said that, actually, let me address this question real quick. Justice Blue says, what all can bullets be made of? So bullets can be made of a variety of different metals. Basically, they're going to have, the metal has to be at least somewhat soft so that it can, be channeled through the rifles, the lands and grooves of the rifle and all that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, it's made of lead, but it could be copper jacketed. I think bismuth is one that they also use. I don't know. But here's the thing. For most people, generally speaking, making your ammo, I don't think making ammo makes a lot of sense in reloading and that kind of thing. If you have the reloading stuff and you can get into it, fairly reasonably and cost wise, then it might make sense. But ammo is so cheap right now that I doubt you can reload stuff for what you can buy it for nowadays. I really don't think so, but maybe you can. I might be wrong because I'm not a reloader. But to me, if you took the money that you were going to put into stocking up on millions of rounds of the supplies, the stuff that you would do to make it, then you're probably could take that money and still have millions of rounds in cases if you bought it in bulk. Especially if you go in with people, if you go in with 10 or 12 other people and you buy like a pallet at a time, you can get ammo really cheap right now. I mean, really cheap. It doesn't hurt to know how to do it, though. It doesn't hurt to know how to do it. It doesn't hurt to have the stuff to do it. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's just that you're still reliant upon having a surplus or supplies of those items. You still have to have primers. You still have to have the casings, and the powder. And making gunpowder is not a viable option when the grid is down. I don't care what anybody says. It's not. You really need to have manufacturing capability to make quality smokeless powder. Now, making low-grade black powder is different, and even then, you still really have to stock up on stuff to make that a reality. So, I don't think if you really start digging down into the different levels of that's probably the best way to go. But Maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong on that. It's just my thoughts on it. Okay, so and what I like I said, what I like to do is I just get it in cases and store it in multiple cases. So let's see here. Where did we end up at? Okay, so the blog post I wrote like 6 or 8 years ago, I was getting ready to talk about before I got sidetracked, was tools. I think tools might potentially be worth more than gold in a real like long-term grid down kind of situation. Tools are highly valuable, and you can do so much. I mean, with tools, digging tools, mechanics tools, carpentry, gardening, metalworking, electrical, plumbing, etc., etc., etc. Hand tools, not just power tools. I mean, those lithium ion cordless tools are awesome. I love them. I use them all the time and everything like that. And they're very durable. They're going to last a long time. All that kind of stuff. But having manual tools to manually be able to, with like a brace and bit, to be able to drill a hole, all that kind of stuff. Those are game-changing tools in a long-term survival situation where we don't have electricity and stuff. Very worthwhile in investing in those kinds of things. Okay, so next thing is barter items, and just understanding and thinking about the concept of barter, and that maybe it's going to be gold, silver, ammo, salt, sugar, alcohol, tobacco, coffee beans, toilet paper, lighters, antibiotics, medicines, painkillers, etc., etc., etc. I did a video that talked about like top 50 things to barter or something. But thinking about barter items is something that preppers do, and it's something that we think about because if there is an economic collapse, then we are not likely to have a currency that's really worth anything. And so generally speaking, when currencies collapse, economies go back to a system of barter at some point. The community is kind of split on whether or not gold and silver will be worth anything. And a lot of people will tell you that ammo should never be traded and all that. That's garbage. I did a video on that. You guys should definitely look at it if you think that ammo should never be traded because you're giving them something that they can kill you with. What you're failing to understand is that any encounter with another person in a grid down situation where you're trading something, it's extremely dangerous. You don't know if they have ammo or not. They may have ammo, and they just telling you that they don't have ammo to put you at a lower state of readiness. So every single encounter is dangerous, and you need to think about how we go about doing it in a smart way. And I talked about it in that video. So, but trading ammo is viable in my opinion. Anyhow, thinking about barter. Okay, the next thing is we're on 33 here. I'm going to be getting close to wrapping it up. Is supplies. When by supplies, I mean lumber, plywood, 2x4s, 2x6s, metal stock, sheet metal, screws, nails, bolts, nuts, wire, cable, rope, chain, etc., etc., etc. Things that you would normally go to Home Depot or Lowe's to get. If Home Depot or Lowe's is no longer open and no longer operating, it becomes difficult to fix things and to repair things. And so having some additional supplies on hand is a good idea. Okay. Creative redundancy asked another question here, said, what about bartering with water treatment, filters, and such? Yeah, you could absolutely do that. You can actually absolutely, maybe, you could set up trading with somebody. Hey, if you had the filters or whatever, if you had enough of them, you could do that. Or maybe I'll filter this water and make it safe for you to drink in exchange for XYZ. Same thing with power generation and having solar panels and being able to build or charge batteries and different things of that nature. That's something that you could barter with. You can barter with skills. You could barter, with medical, like the RN who was talking earlier. There's lots of different things you can barter with. It's really, what do you have? What do you have that is valuable that somebody else needs? And maybe it's just labor. Maybe it's just working. Maybe it's digging a hole, helping them set up defensive fighting positions in their house or around their neighborhood. Maybe it's who knows what, So yeah, there's lots of different things that you could consider for bartering. Okay, so the next one on the list just happened to be power generation. And with power generation, ideally preppers, like I said, we're striving to be self-reliant. We're striving to be able to exist on our own without anything from the outside world. And part of that is being able to generate your own power. Solar, wind, hydro, manually generated power, taking a bicycle and putting the pedals on it or something to power a generator. But a solar generator, like the Energy Kodiak that I've done lots of videos on, a regular generator that has, maybe it uses regular gas fuel and then also propane, like a dual fuel kind of thing. Those are good. They got diesel generators as well. A lot of different things that you could look at as far as power generation, but having some of that is kind of a key thing with being a prepper. You want to be able to make your own power if you can. Okay, so the next thing is kind of defensive capability and supplies for hardening your home. And with this one, we're talking about like sandbags, razor wire, barbed wire, railroad ties, concrete, earth moving machines, tractors, backhoes, those kinds of things become, very useful in a situation where you're trying to make your neighborhood a hard target so that, looters and rioters and stuff like that don't come and try to take your stuff. And I talked a little bit about that in a video recently as well, so I won't go into it too much here. But making your home a hardened target is something that we think about. Okay, the next one, I touched on it briefly, is bug out location or retreat. If you have the ability and you have the resources to buy a piece of property and put like a little cabin on it, or what I always thought I would do is if I ever got another piece of land, that I would put out a just one of those pre-manufactured sheds. You can get like the 10 foot by 20 foot. You can get them for $3,000 or $4,000 usually. That's like an instant cabin right there. You could turn that into a little solar generated cabin. You could tuck it back in the woods and paint it, in some subdued colors and stuff. And, you could live out of that pretty easily, without a huge investment, probably under $20,000, I'd say, aside from the cost of the land. But something like that is what we talk about when we're referring to a bug out location or a bug out retreat. And the idea there is that it's a remote, isolated property. It's already set up and established so that you've got your power generation stuff. You've got your water and sanitation worked out, outhouse, whatever the case may be. You got some food out there and stuff. It's in the middle of prime hunting ground, say, or maybe it backs up to national forest or something. So Tom says, JJ, slow down. I'm taking notes. I will take all these notes and I'll put them into a blog post and I'll put them on realitysurvival.com when I get done here. You guys could take a look at this and maybe you could use this as a guide to just kind of help you think about where you need to, beef up your preps or whatever, and you can pretty much every article that I put out at realitysurvival.com, you can print in a PDF format, and you could take it and you could put it into your emergency binder or whatever the case maybe if you want to. And that's totally free. I definitely appreciate it when you guys sign up for the emails out there. There's like a little email sign up list, and that'll just notify you when I put out new blog posts. I don't sell the emails or anything like that to anybody else. And I also have the affiliate page, which I really appreciate if you use. If you shop online for prepper stuff, go to my affiliate page and just click to the link through there. All you got to do is get to the site through my site, and it will give me credit, and I definitely appreciate that. Okay, here's we're getting down to the last one here, or 37. We're getting the last few, and this one is one of the most important. It's at the bottom of the list, but it's one of the most important, and that is your group, your mutual assistance group, your prepper group, whatever you want to call it, your tribe, your family, your friends, whatever the case may be. I talked about like what the perfect prepper group looks like, because a lot of people think that the perfect prepper group looks like You know, you've got a doctor and a nurse and a welder and 3 special ops guys and an electrician and 2 civil engineering guys and, you know, like all this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, that's not reality. I don't think that's reality at all. I believe that your family, your friends, people that you've known for years, you've gone through stressful situations with them before, you know you can rely on them. Those are the people that you want to include in your group. Okay, there's nothing wrong with trying to specifically find someone who you can incorporate into your group if they have a skill that you need or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem comes when you have a whole lot of type A personalities, and then the group basically just ends up imploding. That's the reality of personal dynamics when you throw people together in a short manner into a highly stressful situation, and the psychology of all that just breaks down very quickly. So when you have people who have skin in the game in your relationship, then it's going to last longer, it's going to be better, and you're going to have stronger bonds. So but the point here is, if you don't have a group right now, make one. You've got friends, talk to them, figure it out, start training, start doing stuff together, you know, talk to them about, well, what if this ever happens? You can come to my house. I trust you. You know, those are things that are important. All right. Because just having the right resume is not what creates a good bond. So, group and tribe mentality. If you're thinking that you can do it alone, watch my lone wolf versus prepper team video or something along those lines. But those people who think that they can do it alone are delusional. Okay. And I'm talking to you. If you think you can do it alone, you're delusional. You cannot. You will die. All right. So just don't even try. Just accept the fact that you need a group. Okay. The next thing here on my list is reference material, and I briefly mentioned this in the medical section, but I wanted to highlight it again because it's hugely important. Having a big prepper library is important. You know, those Foxfire series books, I've got the first 4 over there, but, you know, books on tactics, books on survival manuals, books on water purification methods, books on medical, books on wild edibles, and, you know, herbal medicines, and I mean, just all that kind of stuff is hugely important. Build a prepper library, because when the stress is going on and everything is going on around you and all that kind of stuff, you're not going to be able to remember something. And maybe you learned it once, maybe you even tried it once, but you're going to forget stuff. And so you need to be able to go back and look at those references to be like, oh, that's what I was forgetting. I need to do this. You know, car mechanics manuals like Chilton's manuals and stuff like that, hugely important. You know, a lot of different stuff, but reference material is another one. Okay, next one, next to last on the list here is physical conditioning. You know, I've talked a little bit about this before in some videos, and, you know, some people out there say, you know, like, oh, if you're fat, just stop prepping and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you're fat and out of shape, you need to prep, because you're probably going to need it, you know, but you should strive for functional fitness. Okay. Functional fitness, being able to get out there and work all day, being able to get out there and dig a hole, you know, being able to carry a backpack when you walk somewhere, being able to carry a load back and forth, you know, those kind of things. Look for functional fitness. You don't have to be, you know, 10% body fat and all that kind of nonsense. That there can even be some disadvantages to being super thin, and I talked about that in the starvation video a little bit. But I'm not saying you should be fat either. I'm saying that you should strive to be functionally fit. Okay, whatever that means for you, whatever you think your situation looks like, but you need to be functionally fit. Number 40, and the last one on the list. And then if you guys have any questions over any of these after I cover this one, put them in caps or highlight, you know, my name or whatever, something like that, and I will try to go back through the comments and, you know, answer the questions and stuff. So come up with whatever you want, and I'll try to answer them before we get off. I know we're getting really long here, so I'm gonna try to not spend too much time on that. But so the last one is think about medications, eyeglasses, personal medical items, maybe female hygiene items, stuff like that. Things that you're not going to be able to get after, if there was a bad situation, so figure that out. One of the things I recently learned is the keto diet, where you're basically consuming a lot of high fats and very, very low carbs and protein. It actually has been shown to reverse some type 2 diabetes. I was really surprised by that. I thought that was pretty cool, because people who are diabetic, it's going to be a tough situation on you. So if you can reverse that now, then that might be awesome for you. So Don asked a question here, said, is walking 20 miles a day realistic? I don't know. I doubt it. Probably not for most people's schedules nowadays with work and kids and school and daycare and all that kind of stuff. I mean, 20 miles takes a lot of time, but I think if you shoot for 3 miles a day and you did it like 5 days a week, you're going to be in pretty good shape pretty quick. If you continue to do that over time, continue to do it over time. That's the key, continuing to do things over time. So I don't know that you got to go to extremes or anything like that, but if you could do 15, 20 miles in a week, I think you would be better off than the vast majority of people out there. But I'm not a fitness expert or anything like that. So, that's just my opinion on it. All right, I'm going to go through the comments here real quick and see if I missed anything. You guys are funny. Some of you guys crack me up. All right. Yeah, Alan said a good library is important. You should do a series on it. And I have done at least one video on my medical references that I have. I think I've got 5 or 6 books in my medical library now. And they're all kind of geared towards when there is no doctor and like village medicine and different things like that. So you can check that one out. I haven't talked about all the other ones. I've got to get them out and get them consolidated, because right now I've got some here, I've got some in boxes, some up in the barn, and they're all kind of spread out. So I need to pull them all out, but I have quite a few. Okay. Just see if I'm missing anything. If you guys think of anything before I get off, like I said, feel free to put them in now. And you guys did a lot of JJ's a sexy beast. I like that. You flirting, John? Let's see. All right. I'm not going to have a chance to get through all of this. Alan says he's got 3 rolls of concertina hanging on the garage wall. It's not actually that expensive, believe it or not, right now. I think last time I looked, I think it was like $70 a roll for like 50 feet or something. I don't remember for sure, but it's not extraordinarily expensive. So yeah, why not? Okay. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. I think I've gotten everything. So I guess we're going to go ahead and end this. Thank you very much for everybody who's watching. I definitely appreciate it. As I mentioned before, I try to keep the channel totally free, and I don't want you guys to have to pay anything out of your pockets. So if you can use our affiliates, then that's awesome. All you got to do is go to realitysurvival.com and look on the right-hand sidebar, and any of the links that you see to those companies, those are companies that I'm affiliates with. I'll be adding more of them here shortly. And you can also go to the affiliate page, and it shows you all the companies that I'm affiliates with as well. And, shopping through those things makes the biggest difference in the world, because YouTube doesn't pay anything anymore. It's almost worthless, honestly. I actually have stayed the same since I had 10,000 subscribers. It's been a pretty flat thing. So the channel's gotten 6 times bigger, but the check stayed the same. So I've been lucky that I haven't had a lot of strikes. I've only had one strike, and I haven't had a bazillion videos demonetized. But they still they're not putting our channels out there. So instead of doing Patreon or anything like that, I just ask that you can use our affiliates. I figure that way the company is paying it, you guys are paying the same. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost, it's helping me. We'll let the companies pay for it. Yeah, Justice Blue brings up orienteering. Yeah, I've done a couple of videos on that, reading a map and compass. That should be on this list probably as well. That's actually been one of my most popular videos. If you guys aren't familiar with how to read contour lines, check out that video. It's called How to Read Contour Lines. I think it's a really good video, and it's gotten a lot of good feedback. And it'll teach you how to read a map. If you don't know how to read a topographical map, then check out that video and you will know after you're done. So anyway, guys, as always, I definitely appreciate it when you click the thumbs up button, when you share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.